Coffee, an aromatic drink with a peerless aroma, drunk in the morning to energize us or after lunch to relax with friends. For me, this moment has always been sacred, and often I have shared it with the people I love. Before coming to live in England, it was a moment shared in the family, especially with my mother. Lover of coffee, for her birthday I gonna create a coffee themed card, so that she can remember that for me happiness was sharing a cup of coffee with her. Hi everyone, it's Gigi here and welcome to Be Colorful. I'm sure you know some coffee lovers, so let's start creating 2 cards suitable for their passion. Here, as you can see, I have printed some cups of coffee and the sentiment that I will use in my card. Not having coffee themed dice or stamp, I had to make do. I made the sentiment myself, creating them specifically for my needs. You see, in fact, that one says happiness is a cup of coffee shared with our mother, because, as I said in the intro, one of the 2 cards I will make today, it will be for my mom, from me and my sister. On my blog, for which you can find the link in the info box below, you will find the link to download these images, and moreover, you will find the same sentence dedicated to different people, such as sister, father, brothers, up to the most generic with you. The 2 cards I will make today, in addition to having coffee as a theme, will be 2 Easel cards. So let's get to work right away. I immediately prepare my card base, which in this case will be a kind of easel. I will propose measures that in the end will be exactly the same as those of the standard 4¼ by 5½ card base. So I'm going to make the easel on white cardstock, cutting out a panel that is 11 by 4¼ inches. Then I'm going to make a fold line in the center of the panel that is 5½ and another fold line at 2¾ inches, further dividing the left side of the panel in half. Now I'm going to reinforce the fold lines that I made with the bone folder, obtaining the easel you see in the figure. Then let's move on to the base panel, which will be in a standard size, that's 4¼ by 5½. These 2 panels are the base of the easel card. Now let's start creating the actual card, which in addition to being a easel card will also be a shaker card. With 2 stitch rectangle dies, I'm gonna create a frame on this espresso brown texture card. I'm going to position the 2 dies, aligning them well, and temporarily block them with low stick tape adhesive. I get a frame slightly smaller than my standard card. From this light Tiffany blue pattern paper, I'm going to create a 4¼ by 5½ panel, which will create a nice border all around the frame. Brown and Tiffany are a combination of color that I really like. After cutting out the Tiffany panel, I move on to creating the background for the shaker panel, which is the one that will be seen through the acetate window. So I'm going to cut out a panel on ivory paper that will cover up the entire internal surface of the frame. Then move on to creating a DIY background. I'm going to color the panel with the Distress Ink Vintage Photo. I'm going for a simple ombre look here, from brown all the way to ivory. To make the bottom slightly darker, I'm adding some Distress Ink Walnut stain. Finally, I blend the two colors well by adding another bit of Vintage Photo. Now I'm gonna spray a few drops of water to make the Distress inks react and create a beautiful stain effect. When I create my background, I love to add the drop effect, so I also spray a few drops of walnut stain diluted with water. To add some interest on my background, I'm gonna make some random stamps with this stains set. As a ink, I will use the Coffee Archival ink. And my coffee background is ready. For the shaker element, I'd like to create some coffee beans. I don't have any stamps or dies to make them, so among my dies, I looked for some shape that resembled a coffee bean, and I found a similar shape among my alphanumeric dies, such as the center of the O or the 6 and 9. Or the nose of some creature, such as the reindeer or the nose of Santa Claus, or again dies that cut out the center of the flowers. I will use Santa's big nose, so let's start to create DIY coffee beans. I'm gonna make about 10 using the same brown paper I used for the frame. And here it is. Now, to give them a more realistic look, I'm gonna use my paper modeling kit. First of all, placing the coffee bean with the textured side facing down, I'm going to give it a rounded effect. Then, on the front, I'm going to create the central split. To emphasize this classic split typical of coffee beans, I'm going to color it with a brown alcohol marker and blend with the blender. And here all my coffee beans are ready. Now I'm going to cut out a piece of acetate to create the glass of the shaker panel and glue it to the back of the frame with some double-sided tape. After that, always on the back of the frame, I'm going to close the area with some foam tape, inside which I will insert the shaker element. I put the shaker panel aside for a moment and I'm going to prepare the sentiment. As I said before, I created this sentence myself, printed it on white cardstock, and now I'm going to cut it out with a small stitch rectangle die from the same set I used to create the frame. To bring everything together, I'm going to daub the paper with some Distress ink vintage photo. And I'm going to finish the small sentiment panel with a border made with the same Tiffany paper I used earlier. Finally, I'm going to stick the sentiment to the center of the shaker panel, above the acetate. To ensure that some coffee beans are always visible, I'm going to stick a couple of them in the background, so they will stay in place regardless of the inclination of the card. I arrange the other coffee beans on top of the acetate, with the front facing down. For obvious reasons, I haven't created a lot of coffee beans, so I finish filling the shaker panel with some copper confetti. I remove the protective film from the foam tape and I glue the background panel. And the main shaker panel is ready. Now I'm going to prepare the decoration for the card, which will be the image of a cup that I found on the internet. And now I'm going to cut it out with my scissors. To cut out the inside of the handle, I'm using the precision knife. With alcohol markers, I add some color and shading to add dimension to the element. I'm using two gray-brown for the cup, making the outermost part slightly darker. For the coffee, I'm using dark browns. For the sugar, I'm using a cool gray. Finally, with a white gel pen, I'm going to add some highlight. And the coffee is served. As you can see, a simple coloring can make the difference. Next, I'm going to glue the cup to the main panel using some foam pad. Then I'm going to glue the main panel on the Tiffany pattern paper. And all on the basic panel I created at the beginning. Now I can glue the main panel on the easel, putting the glue only on the part you see in the picture. The easel card needs an element that blocks the front panel in order to keep the card open when desired. So now I'm gonna decorate the base of the easel card by gluing a strip of Tiffany pattern paper on the bottom. Then I'm gonna prepare the element that will keep the easel card open, which will be a sentiment strip. To make the strip I will use a very small stitch rectangle die, which is always part of the set I used to make the frame. With one of my usual sets of stamps that contain generic words for every occasion, it is very versatile and I use it again and again. I recommend investing in such a set type because you will never miss the right sentiment. So I'm gonna stamp Happy Birthday using my stamping platform, which allows me to stamp several times in the same position until I get a nice and crisp impression. The ink I'm using is the Walnut Stain Distress ink, and with this kind of inks you will not get a nice impression at the first stamp. Then I'm gonna position the die by centering the sentence. I'm going to daub the paper with some Distress ink vintage photo to have a same look as the other element. Now I'm gonna create the finishing border by die cut the Espresso brown paper with a slightly larger rectangle die than the one I used for the sentiment. Then I glue the sentiment on top of the new panel. Finally, I glue everything on the base of the easel card using foam tape to make sure that this element has a thickness that blocks the front panel and keep the card open. As final decorations, I'm gonna stamp a few coffee stains on the easel card base using the coffee Archival ink. Finally, I'm going to add a few drops of brown crystal drop here and there, and the card is finished. For the second card, I will show you how to create a easel card with more particular shapes. For example, I will make a circle shape easel card using this die, but you can use any shape that you like. So, to create an easel card with a special shape, take a thick cardstock and divide it into two parts with a fold line. The two parts must be large enough to hold the die of your choice. Now fold the card and arrange the die in order to have a small part of the blade out of the fold line. Thus we get two joined pages. Then fold one of the two pages in half. And the easel is ready. To make the front panel, you can use the same die you used for the easel. When the card is closed, all the shapes will match perfectly. But of course, it is possible to make Easel cards with a different shaped front panel. In this case, I used the same die. Now I'm gonna die cut my background panel, which will completely cover up the front panel. I'm going to use this Tiffany blue pattern paper with a white polka dot. Then I'm gonna create a cute doily with some vellum and this scalloped circle die. Okay, let's move on to the focal point, which will be a cup of coffee seen from above. To create it, I will use 3 dies and some white cardstock. With the largest die, I'm gonna create the plate, while with the other 2 smaller ones, the edge of the cup. Then, with the largest die I used for the edge, I'm gonna create the base of the cup itself. Finally, for the handle of my cup, I'm gonna cut out a small strip of white cardstock. Now all the pieces of my cup are ready, so I move on to the coloring of the base circle because my cup will contain coffee, of course. To color my coffee, I'm going to use Distress Ink Walnut Stain and a blending sponge. Then I'm going to darken up the coffee using a black ink. To make the coffee nice and shiny, I will glue a piece of acetate sheet over the base of the cup. Using some foam tape, I'm gonna glue the edge of the cup over the coffee base. Going back to the little plate, with my modeling paper kit, I tried to give it an indented shape. With some foam tape I'm going to glue the cup onto the plate, and to give more dimension I'm using 2 layers. Then I'm going to stick the handle and finally I'm going to decorate the coffee with a small heart. Now I'm going to stick all the various panels together. The main panel is now ready to be glued onto the easel. The glue must always and only be applied to this part of the easel. Since I have a couple of coffee beans left over, I'm going to use them to decorate this card. So only the blocking element of the easel is missing, which will also be my sentiment, for which I printed the sentiment created by me. After cut it out, I'm going to add the finishing borders with the espresso brown paper. I'm going to glue the sentiment with some foam pad on the base of the easel card. And finally, I'm going to add some finishing touches. With a glossy accent, I make my ceramic cup shiny. I'm going to add a touch of sparkle on the heart using the Nuvo Shimmer pen, and this cute round easel card is finished. The video ends here. I had a lot of fun creating some special cards inspired by coffee, by the memories of the moment shared with the people I love over a cup of coffee, but above all, motivated by the desire to create a card for my mom. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give me a nice thumbs up to the aroma of coffee. See you next time and be colorful! Happy birthday, Mom. I love you and I miss you.